It was in the break room, with the coffee machine buzzing nonstop, that everything flipped upside down. I was pouring a splash of oat milk into my mug when Ryan, the new CEO and direct heir to the founder, walked in. No good morning, no smile, just the quick glance of someone checking out another piece of furniture. "Alice, I need to see you in my office." Now, it didn't sound like an invitation. After 11 years of building customer support from scratch, closing over 100 contracts and training almost the entire team working a few feet away, I followed Ryan down the hall, trying to calm the knot in my chest. He stood behind his desk, didn't offer me a seat. "You're fired." His voice was flat, no weight, no rush. "We don't need lazy people dragging the company down." I blinked, thinking maybe it was some sick joke. "What?" was all I managed. "You heard me." He flipped through papers like picking lunch, already onto the next item on his agenda. And there, in the silence that swallows any argument, I realized loyalty means nothing when power comes by inheritance. "Grab your stuff and go. It's immediate." The shock hit before the sound stopped echoing. My heart pounded in my ears. I wanted to scream, demand answers, rip a reason out of him. Instead, I gave a tight, almost rehearsed smile. "Understood. Have a good day, Ryan." I walked out with what was left of my dignity. Chin up on the outside, inside I was shaking. Down the hallway, coworkers stirred. Some stood up, ready to ask questions, but a slight shake of my head was enough. Don't make it worse. In silence, I packed years of my life into a box. On the drive home, memories slammed against the windshield. 11 years spent chasing deadlines, working holidays, taking calls while choking back tears from the divorce. I'd given everything. Now I was tossed aside like it was worthless. Still, anger didn't come. Only the question, why? I stared at the ceiling all night. Ryan's confident, almost distracted tone didn't match the rush, and the timing was at least suspicious. We were days away from signing the biggest deal in the company's history, a deal I'd nurtured for 6 months. I know the client, and I know something doesn't add up. On the outside, everything looked under control. Inside, Alice could barely breathe. The final review meeting was set for Friday, but suddenly she was standing outside the building, hugging a box of belongings. She wondered if the heir had even glanced at the contract clauses. The next morning, a little after 9, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it ring. I didn't want another hit. Curiosity won. "Alice, this is Mr. Cole." The voice made the floor disappear. It was the real CEO, the man who'd hired me 11 years ago after a single interview. His tone was tense. "I just got to the office. Why the hell did you pack up and leave?" "Your son fired me," I whispered. Silence. I could hear his tight breathing on the other end. "Excuse me?" His voice hardened. "Yesterday he said I was lazy and expendable." Another long pause. When Mr. Cole spoke again, it sounded like he was counting to 10 not to explode. "Alice, did he even read your contract?" "What are you talking about?" "Today, at 11, he has to sign the Kingswell deal, right?" "Yes, that meeting's still on the calendar." On the line, a whisper turned almost into a thunderclap. Jesus Christ. I heard papers rustling before a heavy thud on the desk. "Alice, your contract has a clause," Mr. Cole shot out. "After the fiasco with the last acquisition, I insisted on it. You're not just the account manager, you're the only person authorized to negotiate with Kingswell." I was speechless. "Without you, he can't close the deal," he went on. "Not legally, not ethically, not in practice. If you're not there, it all collapses." The information lit a quiet flame inside me. Ryan had never read the contract. He had no idea what he'd just triggered. The hurt still pulsing in me gave way to another feeling: control. He'd pulled the trigger too fast, and now the gun was pointed at himself. Cole hung up abruptly. The silence that followed seemed to breathe his outrage. I stayed on the couch, untouched coffee cooling, staring into nothing. Ryan fired me with the same ease he mashes buttons on a video game. But this game was real, and real companies don't get extra lives. I leaned back and let out a short, almost unbelieving laugh. 11 years of work about to collapse because a spoiled heir playing CEO wanted to flex. In the next few hours, he'd learn, the hard way, that some contracts don't break. They break whoever tries to ignore them. I still didn't know my next move. Part of me planned to throw on the first clothes I found, walk through those glass doors, and watch the chaos I'd left behind from the front row. The other, the one that endured years of overtime and swallowed pride without complaint, just wanted to see the company burn without my help. I didn't have to wait long. At 10:13, the phone buzzed with the first call. It was Ryan. I let it ring out to voicemail. 60 seconds later, another number. Reception, then legal, then accounting. The screen kept flashing, lighting up the room like Christmas lights, but my finger didn't move. When the voicemail icon started pulsing, I hit play. "Alice, it's Ryan. There was a misunderstanding yesterday. I think I moved too fast. We need you back. Today. It's urgent. Please call me." Urgent. The word clacked around my head like a marble in an empty cup. He didn't apologize. Not even the stock corporate one. Just panic, wrapped in fake courtesy. I took a sip of the cold coffee and sank deeper into the couch, the phone still trembling in my hand. What would ring next? At 10:32, the phone buzzed again. On the screen, a number I hadn't seen in years. Nicole, an old teammate. "Alice, you won't believe what's happening here," she blurts, almost whispering. "Try me," I say, drawing a breath. "Ryan just got chewed out by his dad, in front of everyone, packed conference room." I sit up. "Did he bring the Kingswell contract?" I ask. "Yeah," slammed it on the table and said, "Did you read this before you fired Alice?" Ryan tried to stall, said he was taking the company in a new direction, reevaluating roles. Mr. Cole wasn't buying it. He flipped straight to that clause you always pointed out, the one naming you the exclusive negotiator for the Kingswell account. On the other end, I hear a murmur, chairs scraping, low voices. "Alice!" He went white, realized on the spot he's the one who put Kingswell halfway out the door. Nicole pauses. Only office noise fills the gap. And I smile silently, picturing the contract spread out on the table, a visible proof that sometimes the truth shows up right on time, exactly at 10:32. I take a deep breath before asking, "And what did Mr. Cole say?" "If the deal tanks, Ryan's job is on the line," Nicole answers. There it was, the first crack in my partner's armor. I had the upper hand. "Thanks," I murmur, ending the call. I stand and face the city through the window. The skyline looks unbothered, as if nothing could shake its rhythm. At 11:15, a new message comes in, this time from Mr. Cole himself. "Alice, I'm truly sorry. I misread the situation. Please come in. Not just for the contract, we need to talk privately." Tempting, but not that simple. Ryan's blunder wasn't just about numbers. It touched respect, trust, and the years I poured into this project. Years you can't buy back with a panicked phone call or a seat at the table. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. And for the first time, I knew exactly where to find it. My phone flashed again. Instead of answering, I typed, "I can come back to close the Kingswell deal, but I need to speak with Mr. Cole in person. Those are my terms." I hit send, dropped the phone, and ditched the pajamas. By the time I reached the building, it was past noon. I skipped the employee entrance and crossed the main lobby. Everyone would know I was there. I'd been fired yesterday. Showing up today, head high, was my answer. The receptionist stood as soon as she saw me. "Ms. Harris? Alice, Mr. Cole is expecting you. This way." I followed the hallway. Conversations stopped, chairs creaked, eyes trailed me. The air suddenly felt heavier. Mr. Cole was waiting at his office door. No smile, just a quick nod. I nodded back without offering my hand. He stepped aside so I could walk in first. I sat down, looked him in the eye, and waited. The silence lasted long enough for anyone outside to sense something was about to go down. I had come back, but not to apologize. I was here to set the new rules of the game. The oak door clicked shut behind him. Leaning against it, he took a deep breath before speaking. "I messed up. Gave my son too much power way too soon. I wanted him to prove himself, but he chose to burn bridges before he even learned to build them. I waited in silence. He walked over to the chair across from me and sat. His voice dropped a notch. "What he did to you was unprofessional and disrespectful. Worse, it put at risk a deal that took us more than 6 months to get ready." I nodded slowly. "That's exactly right. I reviewed the contract early this morning, every line. You have full authority over the Kingswell account. By clause, the client recognizes only you as our representative. We added that protection after the Steel Ridge fiasco." "I remember," I said quietly. "I managed the rubble of that disaster myself." He stared at me. "You didn't deserve what happened yesterday. I want you back. Same role, but with a blank check to close the deal. Name your terms, and we'll make it happen." I kept looking at him, feeling the weight of the offer and the chance to rebuild, this time with the bridges in the right place. He spoke softly, but the firmness overflowed. There was regret, yes, but now the matter was bigger than a deal. It was about leadership and respect. "I'll come back," I announced. "But I want everything in writing. Revised contract, full autonomy over Kingswell, and zero interference from Ryan." He agreed with a nod. "I'll take care of it right away." I set my pen on the table and added, "This can't happen again. To anyone." The pause that followed was heavy as lead until he nodded, thoughtful. "You have my word." I stood up. In the hallway, Ryan was pretending to chat with a junior analyst, arms crossed, stiff posture. The moment I appeared, his eyes locked on mine. I didn't flinch. I walked past him slowly, making it clear the game had changed. For a second, I saw the exact moment he realized he'd lost control. At 1 p.m., the conference room was already set up. The Kingswell team came in, folders under their arms, with 30 minutes left until the official presentation. I opened my binder and went through each clause, checking point by point what we'd renegotiated. From here on out, everything would be in writing and under new rules. Everything was on the line that afternoon. I placed, with calculated care, the Arabic version of the final terms on the glass table, the first trust test for our most demanding visitor. On the other side of the clear divider, Ryan paced the hallway like it was a cage. Each lap rattled the nerves of everyone passing by. Before he could blow up, Mr. Cole stepped out and stopped him. A quick exchange of muffled words, a firm, raised hand gesture, and Ryan backed off, blushing. He shot me a look that mixed fury and embarrassment, turned on his heel, and vanished. I knew then I wouldn't see him again that day. Right at 1:30 p.m., the door opened and Mr. S. walked in with 2 silent aides. I greeted him in Arabic. His eyes lit up, a rare sign of approval. "You remembered," he said with a restrained smile. "Respect means a lot." The ice cracked. The conversation flowed without a hitch. Clause by clause, we fine-tuned everything with surgical precision. 2 hours later, we sealed the deal with a firm handshake. When the delegation left, Mr. Cole reappeared, no longer weighted down. "You saved us," he confessed. "I owe you more than an apology." "What you owe your company is a leader," I replied. "Someone who understands the gap between power and responsibility." He just nodded. That night, as I walked to my car, the tension of the last 2 days melted away, like every free step loosened another link in the chain. The deal was done. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, the quiet parking lot was enough. I went back to the company without the badge of an ordinary employee. I carried the certainty of my worth and the demand to have it recognized. Still, I knew the story didn't end there. Ryan was silent, but men like him don't vanish. They just back off before plotting a counterattack. Days later, the industry bulletin ran the headline on the Kingswell deal: "Cross-border negotiation advances. Company strikes historic partnership with Middle East distributor thanks to tailored strategy and multilingual leadership." My name wasn't there, but inside the company, everyone knew who had closed the deal. From then on, my inbox turned into a stream of quiet congratulations. Interns I'd mentored years ago, managers who used to tune me out in meetings. Everyone praised how steady I'd been under pressure. I took every message with gratitude, never losing sight of how easily people switch sides when the wind changes. The mood around the office eased, smiles in the break room, laughter in the halls. Mr. Cole let everyone know Ryan was out of high-level decisions until further notice. Still, the feeling that something didn't add up kept throbbing. I kept my eyes open, certain the next move was coming, and this time I'd be ready. It started almost imperceptibly. First, my reimbursement for the Kingswell trip took longer than usual to get approved. Then reports I'd prepared landed back on my desk unsigned, no explanation. Nothing I could call serious, just the kind of static that erodes trust. Things took shape when IT called me in. An email, supposedly from my address, carried the wrong client data and had already been forwarded to an overseas partner. Thankfully, it was someone I had a great relationship with. He called me before the damage spread. Even so, the seed of doubt was planted. I asked the systems team to trace the source. No sign of an outside attack. The message came from inside the office. That's when I realized Ryan had changed tactics. He wasn't looking for a clear reason to fire me anymore. That direct line had failed. Now the plan was slow and silent. Chip away at my reputation piece by piece until I looked like a risk the company itself would want to eliminate. I'd seen this game before. In my first job, fresh out of college, a director pulled the same stunt: cut resources, isolate people from projects, spread half-truths until the target quit on their own. Back then, I didn't know how to react. Now, I recognize every move on the board, and I know the next play has to be mine. I wasn't the 22-year-old who could be pushed out of the frame anymore. Not this time. I started documenting everything: emails that never arrived, glitches I got blamed for, every minute lost to delays I hadn't caused. It soon became clear that in this place, paper spoke louder than feelings. Just in case, I carried a notebook of my own, jotting down times, dates, entire conversations. One random afternoon, that habit paid off. I was crossing the hallway when voices slipped out of the conference room. Ryan was talking too loud for someone who wanted secrecy. "She's unstable," he said. "Since she came back, she's erratic, aggressive. She's not fit to handle high-pressure clients." I froze, heart pounding, pen between my fingers. "I'm just saying," he went on, "maybe it's time to think about succession in customer service. It's obvious she can't keep the pace." Another exec, younger voice, tried to defend me. "Maybe, but the Kingswell deal she closed." Ryan let out a short laugh. "Pure luck, and luck doesn't keep a company afloat." I stood there motionless, listening until the last whisper. In my pocket, the notebook felt heavier than ever, and this time, my word would come with proof. I held still for a moment and slipped away without a sound. What chilled my blood wasn't fear, but the precision of his moves. He was sewing again, poisoning the water. That night, I stayed at the office after hours. The building slept. Only the exit lights were on. Sitting in the glass-walled conference room, I stared at the city's bright mosaic and wondered how many battles I'd have to fight just to keep doing my job. The silence broke. "Still here?" It was Mr. Cole. "I could ask you the same." He set a folder on the table. "Your revised contract, all as agreed." I flipped through the pages, airtight. I nodded. "I've started an internal audit," he said. "A lot of files have been ending up in the wrong place." I met his gaze. "I'm not blind, Alice. I know Ryan's still going to make a move." "Then why not stop him?" The pause stretched. "Because I needed to see how far he'd go." The fatigue in his voice sounded more paternal than corporate. "You want to protect the company," I noted. He shook his head. "I'm trying to protect both of you. Maybe it's already too late for one." I closed the folder. "I don't need protection. I need you to decide what legacy you want to leave." He held my stare, turned, and walked out. In that moment, I knew. The real fight was just beginning. The office felt freezing that week, and not because of the AC. The temperature dropped the moment tension filled every corner. Conversations dimmed to whispers whenever people noticed me. Some coworkers forced a smile, others buried themselves in paperwork so they wouldn't have to meet my eyes. The internal audit had started, and everyone felt the hit. I did too. I wasn't the one who asked Mr. Cole to launch the investigation, but deep down I was grateful. We needed light on what had been happening since Ryan took charge, but I know how corporations work. Truth doesn't guarantee justice. Sometimes it ends with quiet exits and generous severance. Other times it gets buried under stamps until the damage is permanent. On Thursday, they called me to the committee's headquarters, a makeshift war room in a storage space. Boxes of documents stacked high, monitors packed with spreadsheets, a whiteboard covered in timelines and digital breadcrumbs. David, the head auditor, walked up to me. "Alice, thanks for coming. We need to clear up a few irregularities." I nodded and sat down. He projected a file on the screen. "Let's start with this email that seems to have been sent from your account. We found out it came from a shared computer next to the break room. That's when I realized this was just the first loose thread in a much bigger scheme. Someone logged into the system under your username," David began, staring at the monitor like he was still hunting for another explanation. "No phishing. It was someone in-house using your credentials." I folded my arms. "I reported it the day I spotted the breach." He nodded, almost embarrassed. "And that saved us time. Since then, we've found other incidents. Rewritten emails, doctored spreadsheets, approvals wiped, always on communal machines, always under your login." The air grew heavy. "This is coordinated work," I said. David took a deep breath. "We've narrowed down the list of possible players and found weird activity tied to Ryan's executive assistant's account." I went still. He went on, choosing his words. "We haven't named anyone yet, but the pattern's clear. Sabotage to discredit you, and maybe others." I clenched my jaw. "What's the next step?" "That's where it gets tricky," he replied. "Mr. Cole wants to hear our findings in person. He says he wants the truth, the whole thing." I nodded. "I'll be at the meeting." David raised his eyebrows. "You're not required." "Even so, I'll be there. If this comes out, I want to look everyone in the eye." He didn't argue. That night I barely slept. I thought about the coworkers who'd slipped out quietly these past few months, talented people seen as promising who just vanished from the roster. I'd chalked it up to normal turnover. Now I wonder how many were pushed out by Ryan's games. I got to the executive suite early. Mr. Cole was already by the window, motionless, like he was waiting for the final card before making his next move. David came in with 2 auditors. I was already seated when Ryan showed up 10 minutes later, wearing his boss face, until he saw me. He froze in the doorway. "She's not on the committee," he said. Without turning his head, Mr. Cole answered, "She's here at my request." Ryan stiffened. "This meeting was supposed to be internal, confidential." I kept my voice steady. "It would have been confidential if you hadn't used company resources to forge emails." "Ridiculous," Ryan shot back, but the laugh sounded hollow. David opened the folder on the table. "We mapped several login attempts tied to your assistant's account, all linked to failures in Alice's project. The timeline leaves no doubt." Ryan's mask started to slip. "You're reaching. She's just bitter because she got let go." I stared him down. "You didn't let me go, Ryan. You sabotaged me and almost sank this company's biggest deal in 5 years." Only then did Mr. Cole swivel his chair to face Ryan. "I gave you more than one chance," he said softly, "and all you've done is undermine the people trying to build something real here." "It's not what it looks like," Ryan tried. "It's worse," Mr. Cole cut in. A heavy silence settled. The executive stood up. "The board will review the report. Until then, you're suspended, effective immediately." Ryan opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at me, not angry, but stunned, like someone realizing the old tricks don't work anymore, and walked out in silence. Mr. Cole let out a long breath, as if surrendering the weight of a mistake. "I failed him," Mr. Cole admitted, head bowed. "As a leader, maybe even as a father." I let the silence hang before answering. "You can't guide someone who doesn't want to grow, but the company still needs someone to steer it." He studied me, nodded, and there appeared the first crack of relief since it all began. 2 weeks had passed since the disastrous audit, yet the shock waves of that meeting still rippled through every department. Ryan never showed up again. The cocky smile he'd worn like a trophy became fodder for whispers. The board moved fast, forged emails, suspicious logins, missing files, fabricated complaints. Everything pointed to him or those he manipulated. When the final report arrived, it was clear. It wasn't just an attempt to take me down. He damaged the company's integrity. Suspension turned into termination. No lawsuits, no press. Just a quiet exit through the service door of corporate history. I thought I'd celebrate when I heard the verdict. Instead, calm washed over me. It wasn't victory. It was steadiness. I'd weathered the storm. Now, finally, I could breathe. A few days later, Mr. Cole called me to his office. As soon as I stepped in, he closed the door behind us and stayed silent for a moment, as if searching for the exact words. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened," he began, sitting at the desk. In front of him was a folder, still sealed. "And about the company we want to build from here on out." I waited, letting him steer the conversation. "Over the last month, you've shown more leadership than many executives do in an entire career. You protected our biggest contract, kept calm when you were publicly criticized, and handled personal attacks with professionalism. That's the kind of partner I need beside me." He slid the folder toward me. Inside was a promotion letter, Director of Client Strategy, reporting directly to him. I looked up, surprised. "I didn't ask for this." "Exactly why you deserve it," he replied firmly. I took a deep breath and gave a slight nod. If I accept, I want to make it count, not just hold a title, but rebuild this company's culture the right way. He smiled, as if he'd expected that condition, and also knew the work ahead of us. "That's exactly what I needed to hear," he said, with a half-smile that still echoed in my head hours later. That same night, I sat alone in the temporary office, a borrowed room while the renovation crawled along. The nameplate on the door was still blank, a silent reminder that no one would write my name for me. I'd spent years walking these halls, putting out fires almost no one saw, contracts saved at the last minute, clients convinced to stay, deadlines met at the cost of sleepless nights. I believed silence kept the peace, but I learned it also erases who you are. When recognition finally came, I realized it wasn't just about a position. It was about remembering that competence isn't arrogance and firmness isn't weakness. I'd been underestimated, discarded, even sabotaged, but never defeated. I refused to let it make me bitter. That was the most important win. In the weeks that followed, I started reshaping the department. I reopened communication channels, brought back colleagues who'd been sidelined without reason, and created an anonymous reporting system. I wanted no one else to swallow their voice for fear of retaliation. Today, the nameplate on the door still waits for my name, but it no longer bothers me. It will come, and when it does, it won't be just a piece of engraved metal. It'll be proof that silence can be broken and turned into real change. You know that moment when the line between winning and losing stops mattering because something bigger is at stake? That's what I shared with the interns who stopped me in the hallway, curious eyes wanting to know how I endured the storm they watched from afar. "We don't always choose the battles," I told them, "but we always choose who we'll be when the dust settles." Ryan would know. The last I heard, he was interviewing at small firms out of state. Reputation got there first, and many swear Mr. Cole pulled strings behind the scenes to spare his son's name. If it was a final act of fatherly care, I'll never know. I didn't need to ask. One afternoon, I walked the office at a calm pace and stopped in front of the glass wall that once held the Kingswell negotiation. I touched the glass, remembering the sabotage, the frantic calls, the panic, and finally the triumph. That contract changed my career, but the real turning point came before any numbers were signed. It was when I smiled at Ryan, left his office, and refused to beg. That's when I understood my worth. And I made a silent pact. Never again will some executive's son, or anyone else, take that away from me.